Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting of Finance Review Group. Just a bit of housekeeping first. Could I please remind all those present to wear a face mask until seated and maintain a sensible social distance when moving around the chamber and to use the hand sanitizer provided. Can also please scan in the QR NHS app poster with your mobile phone located at the entrance to the chamber and switch your mobile phones to silent. Members and officers, please remember to switch microphones on and speak directly into the microphone and switch off again after speaking. Reporting officers using Teams, I don't think we have any this evening. This meeting will be live streamed to the public and the recording of the meeting available on the council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. Any exempt private items on the agenda, the live stream will cease prior to the meeting moving into private, and there will be a short delay for those viewing on YouTube. So in the absence of the chair, could I have a nomination for chair, please? Is that seconded? Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Right, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillor M. Hussain, who has been substituted by Councillor Ghulam Javid.
Right, minutes from the last meeting. There aren't any now. Disclosures of interest.
None that have been made aware of, Chair.
No urgent business, I take it.
I'll just remind the Chair that as this is the budget, Section 106 would apply.
Oh, yes, Section 106. In terms of council tax, that's a blanket thing, isn't it? Yeah.
That's correct, Chair.
There are no references from committees and other bodies?
Again, non-Chair.
All right. There are certainly no chair's announcements. So we'll get on to finance updates.
Thanks, Chair. I'm having issues connecting with the network, but anyway, I'll go through what I know. For some reason, I don't know. I've got a new laptop, is always a problem when you get a new laptop. So in terms of finance updates, Chair, yeah, we are working on the Q3. So this is the budget report, but the finance update, we are working on the quarter 3, which is P9, and hopefully we'll be finalizing in the next 2 weeks to come. So next time I can give you a brief update on the monitoring position for the 9 months. And then I think it's coming to the executive in March. So I should be able to give you a much more up-to-date position. What you got in the budget is there is a paragraph on the budget papers on the Q2, but now we are working on Q3 for 21-22. Thanks, Chair.
It's just for noting, Chair.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, I've got it's misleading on the agenda page. It's the way it's come out. The item 9 is actually budget update, but there's a presentation which does incorporate agenda item 10, which is treasury management.
Okay, thanks, Chair. This is a paper which was presented to FRG, the detailed budget report, which is going to, it went to first executive, is going to the second executive, but what we've said is we will have a special meeting, which is today, to discuss the detailed budget. So I've got the slides, just a few slides, which I will take you through the slides. And then if you've got any specific question in the report, which you had, I think in the beginning of January, then I'm quite happy to go through. But that report is coming to the next executive, and then we'll go to full council. So I've got this slide on the timetable. So first, in terms of background, so by and large, our medium-term financial plan, which looks over 3 to 4 years. So when we did the 21-22 budget, we did a stress test and we did some best case, worst case. So the medium-term financial plan, by and large, is in line with our forecast, but obviously COVID pressures and the latest inflation pressures, which had to build in, and then there is the latest settlement, which is a 1-year settlement. We had to take those into account. But give and take the medium-term financial plan, the gap which we forecasted is more or less in line. But in the next budget report, you'll have a forecast which I'll take you what is the gap going forward. Currently, as I mentioned, Chair, is we have a deficit of 0.7. That was Q2 figures, but we're working on Q3. And based on the Q3 figures, the focus is to have a balanced budget for 21-22 as well. So that was Q2 figures. So that you will see there's a report coming to FRG and executive meeting, but we are forecasting a balanced budget for 21-22. I have to say 22-23 has been a very complex and challenging budget, mainly because of uncertain environment, because the finance settlement has been just a one-year settlement, because of COVID, because of demographic changes, because of inflation, because of the uncertainty on sales fees and charges. So it has been a very challenging. Plus, of course, we've still got the stabilization plan for the airport, and it still is something which are keeping a close look at. So when you take all these into account, and there won't be any further funding coming from central government in 22-23 to cover any impact from COVID, it has been a complex and challenging budget to put together. The spending review, by and large, has not been favorable, although first impression was it's like a bonanza budget, but when you take all the additional costs, the adult social care precept, which is just 1%, we budgeted for a 3%. Then when you take all these into account, it has not been a favorable settlement for local government. There has been additional funding towards NHS and schools, but local government still there is social care pressure and housing, and social care, both adult social care and children, still those pressures is there. So hopefully the white paper should address, but I think unless local government is properly funded in terms of social care, it still is a challenge. So the leveling up fund will wait, comes the Secretary Michael Gove reform, and we'll see what that will result into for local government, and especially for the council, who has been quite badly hit in terms of previous settlement. Based on the latest, the council tax, we are limited to increase by 1.99, and a social care precept limited only 1%. These are the recommendation which will go to executive and to full council for approval, but the budget will has been based on 1.99 increase in council tax and social care precept of 1%. There's still challenges. COVID is still a challenge. The impact of COVID in terms of recovery is still a challenge. The financial crisis, I mean by local government as a whole, there should be more funding coming towards local government. The climate change, the care sector, the supply chain, inclusive growth, governance, all of the issues which are quite challenging, which is faced by all local government. So we have to put this into context when we're looking at the budget. So next slide, please. Any budget has got assumptions. So here, the assumptions which we've got in the budget, one is payout, because pay is quite a significant part of the budget. So for 22-23, we've got 2.2%, and in the medium-term financial plan, 2% for future years. Increase in capital program, we try to limit this between the headroom, i.e. if the old capital program from prior years dropping out of the system, then we put new capital program, but then there are additional projects which you will see in the detailed report in the Green Book, and subject to prudence, affordability, and sustainability. So always look at our capital program and see whether it's sustainable or affordable. Now, when you will come to the capital program, there are significant additional support and funding towards our subsidiary companies, but those are based on the capital program which has been approved by the council as part of the stability plan. The growth includes inflation and avoidable pressures. So I will take you through the growth items. There's a slide, and then there's this additional 1.25 national insurance which will have to contribute, and based on the settlement, those additional costs is already included in the settlement. So that's when you look at the settlement itself, taking into account inflation and national insurance plus pay award plus the national living wage, it's not sort of cover all the costs the council will have to face. The additional growth you will see on key service areas, this budget includes 3.3 million. So this is additional growth, and I will take you through the items which are the key areas. There's one-off income, but if there's one-off income, we don't try to use one-off income to balance the budget. like covering recurrent costs. We took out business rate. We haven't assumed any business rate other than increasing multipliers, basically the increase in inflation. COVID-19 pressures reimbursed by government, but there won't be any additional COVID money coming from central government in 22-23. But the pressures will still be with us for a while. We talk about council tax, we talk about precepts, and LAL income, I think members are aware when we put that emergency budget, any reliance on dividend has been removed from the council budget to make sure the council budget is more sustainable and resilient going forward. So it's good to look at those assumptions because these key. If any of those assumptions is going to change, it will have an impact on the budget. So next slides, please. So in the budget, we start with a gap. And as I said, by and large, you will see in the medium-term financial, we start with a gap 4 or 5 million every year. This year in the tracker, what we've included in the 22-23 budget, which says draft savings recommended for inclusion, is around 330,000. Why we've got a savings program of 330, we'll have its second tracker savings too in the next slide, but I will just hold on this one because in the emergency budget, there was a program to deliver 22 million of savings. And that was to make sure we've got a resilient and sustainable budget going forward. There's still savings from those programs will be delivered in 22-23, and there's an element will be delivered in 24-25 as well. And those savings program accounts for nearly 5 million in 22-23. So the new savings, which is being recommended here for decision to be made by members in full council is around 330. But there is an element of 5 million, which is being delivered over this year, and part of it will be next year as well. So next slide, please. There are a few more savings. There is additional income from commercial property, and there are some other savings. Now, these savings, although we are going to deliver it 22-23, we have not built it in the budget because there might be an element of risk associated. So we're trying to take a cautious approach because there are budget pressures within 22-23. So we're trying to not cash in all the savings, and as and when we deliver, we might have to use part of those savings to have any growth which might happen due to budget pressures. So the next slide, please. Thanks. So this is a saving. This as well has not been built in the 22-23 budget, but as the title says, it's cross-cutting. So these are at very much discovery phase. So the work which is taking place, and these are you will see in terms of review of sales and charges, commercialization, transformation, and procurement. So these are work is happening in terms of sales and charges. We've already commissioned a firm of consultant to look at the sales and charges, but all will have to go through the proper governance and scrutiny process before any decision is made. So at this stage, there's no decision is being made, which will have an impact on the budget, but we have to have a sustainable and resilient budget. When we look at the medium-term financial plan, then we have to start to do early work on that in order to deliver into 22-23 and 23-24. But the point I'm making here, when we look at the medium-term financial plan, then you will see there's a 4 million gap in the medium-term financial plan, and work is starting to make sure we have a balanced budget going forward, a resilient medium-term financial, and these are the projects will be starting to work. And a lot of work has already taken place. On sales and charges, work has already been taken place. Next slide, please. Then the growth. So as mentioned earlier, there's 3.3 million cash going into the budget, additional cash, and the bulk of those is going in frontline. So neighborhood services include street cleansing, the modeling, what type of service that will be coming to the members for this year, but roughly by and large, there's £1 million additional money which is going to the budget. Enforcement, 0.2 million. Waste management as a result of COVID and impact of people, quite a lot of people are working from home, so there's more waste being created, and there has been a reduction in the price of recycling. So we acknowledge these are some of the budget pressure which we're already experiencing in 21-22. So you will see highways 196, neighborhood services market supplement. So bulk of those supplies and services for 18 living care provision. So 3 million of additional money, hard cash, is going into the 22 to 20 budget. Most of them is on frontline. And these are the things which is included based on some of the budget pressure which we're already experiencing in 21-22. So some of them has already built in. What I would suggest here is we have some budget pressures which is already in the current year budget, and those are we have to work on a deficit recovery plan to address those budget pressures. So that's why I'm saying it's a quite complex budget, because some of the impact of COVID, if that reverses, then we can address some of those budget pressures. But if COVID pressures continues, then we'll have to look at. So you will see there is an additional contingency which is built to address those additional budget pressures. So part of the 6, there is a 3.3 million one-off, but just to make sure that if there's any COVID continues in 22-23 and the sales fees and charges, we have a level of contingency which we'll have to manage. But you have to closely monitor the budget, because if we have to take corrective measures, we will have to take corrective measures. The next slide, please. This is a bit like what you call a waterfall. Those are on the blue side where it has as a result of increasing costs in the budget, and on the right-hand side, the red one is additional income or additional grant we are generating. So it shows you will see on the left-hand side, inflation and pay, pension, national insurance account for quite a significant increase. And then you've got service growth, and then you've got reversal of one-off grants. So some of the grant which you received in last year, that fall out of the system. And then on the right-hand side, you see by far the biggest element is on the right-hand side, council tax and precepts. And then you've got return on investment, which is additional return from the loan provided to LAL. So those are the two biggest elements. So you will see more and more when you look at going forward, the local government is funded more through council tax and business rates, because that's where, and precept is an element which is built in. But that's quite, there's a much more detail in the budget papers, but that gives you a little bit a view of where the pluses and minuses in the budget. Next slides, please. Now, once we do the budget, then we also have to look at how resilient the medium-term financial plan is. So 22-23 budget is a balanced budget. Going forward the next 4 years, on the green side is what is the savings which we have to deliver. And the blue is the income, and the red one is a budget cap. So there's, I think if I can read it, there's around £1 million and there's 2 million in the next year. So provided we deliver the 4 million and the 1 million, then there's a gap of 4 million. And that's on the note you will see there's a gap, sorry. And then we've got the tracker savings, which you've seen the slides earlier. We are working on a program cross-cutting of 4 million. And that's 4 million to address 22-23 and 23-24. And the reason we try to look at this year and the next 2 years is because the finance settlement is 3-year settlement. So the 25, 26, 26, 27 will be start to work on those in the very near future, but also depends on the next spending review, because spending review of 3 years, and that's why. But at least we are trying to concentrate on 23, 24, and 24, 25 to have a balanced budget. So there's a gap of roughly at this stage around 4 million. There are some consultation paper. If you can stay on that one, just find the point I was going to make. Sorry. There was a consultation paper going on MRP. This is what government is coming up with, some suggestion that council will have to make a provision for MRP. MRP is basically for repaying the loan. But this consultation paper, we are still looking at it. But if there are any announcement or SIPFA has produced their own consultation, so if there's any development, I will have to brief members on that. But right now, still in discussion. The next slides, please. And that's a bit the same, but reflected in a sort of like graph. But one of the things which you will see here is key messages. The average growth amounts to 8 million. We get increase in council tax, business rates and income and some additional grant from central government. So the gap we start every year with a gap of roughly 4 million. So that's why councils are saying local government finance is not sustainable. Because when you look at pay, additional increases in demographic changes, growth, there is 8 million by and large every year. Less council tax benefits, we always have a gap of 4 million. Yeah. And that's why it becomes more and more difficult and challenging. And that's why there has been some additional precept being allowed council to increase. But next year is going to be 1%. We don't know going forward what that precept looks like. So you will see over 4 years a gap of 12 million, but then it depends on the delivery of some of the cumulative savings. So next slides, please. So that takes us from the revenue. And in terms of treasury management, council did approve a stabilization plan that was part of the emergency budget and the 21-22 budget, and there was one approved part of the special force measure. But that as well, just to bear in mind that it's subject to further COVID impact. So right now, hopefully we are coming out of COVID and it's becoming more sort of like manageable. But right now, the capital program, we haven't made any additional allowance for any additional funding to LAL, because based on our stress test, that package which was approved previously, that is enough in order to take any stress as a result of COVID. The SIPFA report, which we've discussed, in terms of the timing and recommendation of that, we'll have to take into account what impact this will have on our treasury. But I think we've discussed that and members have already got a copy. What will be the borrowing going forward? But this year we've managed to lock the bulk of the borrowing at fixed rate. So most of the total borrowing from the council capital program might have been locked already. So any increase in inflation, may have an impact going forward, but we've built in an additional increase, assuming that interest rate will go over the next 2 years. So all our borrowings, most of them is already fixed. So if there's any changes in interest rate, at least we are protected. Return on investment, we've already removed the reliance on dividend. However, it's worth noting that LAL still contribute a significant amount in terms of our budget in the region of 27 million. So that is helped to deliver quite our savings. We always look at capital program, we only look at what is prudent, what is affordable. We'll be looking at delivery models and financing options. So in the budget, you will see there's 2 or 3 big projects. One is the council was successful to receive 20 million of leveling up fund, but the project in itself is over and above 100 million. So there's town regeneration. So in the capital program, there are 3 or 4 big projects, but that's where we do further work, further business case, looking at delivery models, looking at financing options. So those are in the capital program, but not part of the borrowing requirement at this stage. Next slides, please. The capital expenditure, and that's the biggest element you will see on the left-hand side for 22-22 and 22-23 is commercial. And commercial is our investment in the airport, our investment in Foxhall, our subsidiary company. So those generate additional interest. You will see going forward, 24-25, that commercial has shrunk. So those projects in terms of the DART projects, the DCO projects, that by that time, hopefully that will be finished. And then there won't be any additional commercial loan. The rest you will see the blue one is inclusive economy. So there is some additional investment in 22-23 and 23-24, but then it starts to be more stable. And then children, families and education, those are quite part of this is funded from the DSG and population and well-being. So that gives you a picture in terms of our capital expenditure. And the next slide, please. And how these are financed. So you will see the blue one is grant and contribution. So these are school grants, some of the section 106, and there's contribution as well. The element which is in terms of brown is revenue contribution. So there is around 4 to 5 million, which still revenues contribution towards the capital program. Airport dividend is none, and we do rely on capital receipts. So in 23 and 23-24, there is in the region of around 10 million of capital receipts. So that capital program also depends on the capital receipts, but those are the capital receipts which will be lent, which will be sold to Vauxhall homes in order to do further development. So those are capital. So we are not assuming any capital receipts going forward, but if there are further capital receipts, that will reduce our borrowing requirement. So that leads us to the next slide, please. And that's for HRA financing. So HRA is a fund in its own, it's separate from general fund. And you will see the revenue contribution toward the capital program is quite significant. So any surplus which goes in the HRA goes towards financing the capital program. And there is capital receipts as well in the HRA, and that is like one-for-one receipts when we dispose properties. So this is the HRA financing. So this is an element of the capital program as well. But we are not assuming that we are going to borrow for HRA. So there's no borrowing for the time being for HRA. Next slide, please. So taking into account the capital program and the investment, that gives us a view of what that borrowing will look like in the next 5 years. And I said we'll have to look at the affordability of those borrowing, and those costs are built in the revenue budget. So March 2022, 775, and then it keeps on going, and that's links with the capital program of investment. So 931, and then it's more or less stable. So why there's an increase here, that's the investment going towards the DOT project, the DCO, and at the same time is Vauxhall Home as well, which is investment to develop residential properties. And then you will see it's flat, yes.
Yep, sorry to interrupt. While we've got the slide on the screen, do these figures include internal borrowing, or is it only external borrowing?
Okay, good question. So if, let's say we take March 23, okay, that's a budget we're looking at 22-23. The total borrowing is the total amount which we require to fund our capital program and everything. 931 is the maximum. If during the year we have excess cash, if during the year we have our reserves, so our reserves are cash back. So let's say we've got reserves of, let's say 50, 60, 70 million. We've got a cash flow positive of, let's say 20 million. We do have a cash flow at the beginning of the year. And then February, March are dry months. That's where we don't get too much in terms of construction business rates. So if we have, let's say throughout the year, an additional cash flow of 100 million, then the amount we are going to borrow will be 931 minus 100 million. So that includes if we do any internal borrowing. If let's say we don't have any reserves or we don't have any cash flow, then we will borrow up to 931, and that's a maximum we can borrow based on our capital program. Any internal borrowing will reduce external borrowing. So still our borrowing will be 931. Let's say for argument's sake, 100 million internal and 831 might be external. So the total borrowing, including if we do any internal borrowing, will still be 931. It won't go above 931.
Well, yes, of course, internal borrowing reduces external borrowing. That's the whole purpose of it. But these figures include internal borrowing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's not on top of that. Our borrowing is that maximum. How we split it between internal and external will depends on the cash flow, but that excludes internal borrowing. Next slide, please. So one of the ratio which, as I've mentioned, in terms of treasury, you have to look at ratios in terms of affordability, what is sustainable. But one of the ratios we look at, the one on the blue side, is how much of the interest, so that's a financing cost, compared to the net revenue stream is all our council tax, business rates, and growth and everything. So we have to keep an eye on that, is how much of our financing cost is and what, yeah. So you will see slightly is going up. Why it's going up? Because there has been, you will see the capital program, when you look at inclusive economy, there has been investment. When you look at the capital program, detailed investment, going some of them in vehicles, IT. So when there is additional investment in capital program, the cost of servicing and what you call MRP, the debt repayment, goes up. And that's why you will see it's going up to 11.52 over the next 5 years. The one which is below, which is negative, the reason which is negative because it's not cost, is income. This is a net interest we are getting from LAB. And that net interest is in the region of 19.7 of the net revenue stream. So the point here is there's 20% of the net revenue stream is represent the commercial activity. And that's quite a point to note here, that we generate significant commercial income in order to balance our budget. Next slide, please. There will be a couple of slides on level of reserves. I think if I take the next one, which compared with the next one, please. Yeah, this is comparing all unitaries. Okay, so some of them are has got high level of reserves. Some of them has got a low level of reserves. The council is more or less in the middle, so it's close to the average. But if we had a little bit more in reserves, then that would be average. So ideally, we would like the council to be at average, but we've got a level of reserves which we have. If there are any uncertainty, the council will be able to cope with those level of uncertainty. So we're not running a reserves which is sort of at a very low level where will give me some concerns as a Section 151 officer. So at this stage, our reserve, we say, okay, yeah, it's a fair level of reserves. Next slide, please. But one point I would say on reserves is, I'm sure I've made it quite a few times, we can't use reserves to fund ongoing expenditure. We can use reserves to fund one-off. So we do have like invest to save, spend to save, so we can use those reserves, but we can't use reserves for ongoing expenditure like providing services on an ongoing basis. That's not prudent. HRA, I will touch on HRA. So these are the things which are that time, but HRA, which is going, the recommended increase in rent is 2.5. So that is in the HRA account. But that was a little bit out if we increase it by 4.1 or 3.1 or 2.5. So that was some work which was being done. So next slide, please. This one, as I said, the housing revenue account will have a surplus, and the surplus in the housing revenue account goes towards building additional properties. So that slide just touches on the HRA. So next slide, please. And that shows the HRA account. And you will see the bulk of the HRA income is coming on the right-hand side red. There's a little element which is the service charges. On the left-hand side is the bulk you will see in terms of repairs and maintenance, and then the replacement of management fees, and which is on the supervision and management fees. So HRA rent is something which you have to look at, because the surplus on HRA 2.9 million is being used to fund housing building program. So that's where you will see on the previous slides, the capital program of the HRA is not funded through borrowing, it's funded through part of this for surplus and part of this capital receipts. Next slide, please. Right to buy is important because the receipts we generate from disposal of properties, which we call income 141, we have to spend it. If you don't spend those within a time period, we will lose that money. So that's the narrative at the bottom of the slide says, in order to spend the above balance of 8.4 million, the council will have to spend 28 million. So if you have a business case, we have to find 28 million, but 8.4 million of that we can use the right to buy receipts. And those are the things which we always have to look at the capital program in HRA, building more and more properties so that we don't lose this right to buy receipts. Next slide, please. That shows HRA capital program. As I mentioned previously, we look at HRA financing. So you will see what is important here on the blue, a bit purple one. There's a big major works over the last 4 or 5 years, and that's coming to an end. So in 23-24 onwards, the major works is not at that level. We had a quite significant major works program over the last 4 or 5 years. And when we do less major works, the money which is left in green will be used to build additional affordable homes. So once the major works program, any additional money goes towards the additional new affordable homes. Next slide, please. think by and large at the beginning I've discussed quite a lot of these risks, and they are risks. With COVID is a risk which 1 year final settlement, it was pointing out that in this year's settlement, there is something which we'll call a special grant called service grant, which is in the region of 3 million. Now, this is one-off. Next year, when we have our final settlement, the government is looking at how they will redistribute that next year's final settlement. So it's every council are a bit concerned about what will happen to this grant, whether we'll get it back, we'll get less, or we'll get more. So these are the risks which absolutely is key in the preparation of the budget, but we'll have to monitor that. Just to point out that in this year's budget, we've allowed a one-off 3.5 million of transition contingency. So it's a transition fund to help the council through the COVID, because we're not going to receive significant amount on COVID, but the impact of COVID will still be in 22, 23, 24, and maybe 24, 25. So in the budget, you will see there's around 3.5 million to deal with any transition. So until we transit into a more sustainable post-COVID economy. I think that's the next slide is, I think it's the end now. I think I don't have any further. Yeah, there's one slide on school funding. I see the point here in school funding, you will see the high needs block and schools block has had quite a significant increase. The government has prioritized schools, and there was high needs block especially, which has had quite a big challenge. That there is a sort of additional funding from central government. So in the council, we have to look at high needs block, but I know some of the council has got quite a significant challenge in terms of the high needs block. So it was keeping an eye on the school. So, and at the same time, you will see the DSG overall from 2021 has increased from 234 to 259 million. So that's quite a significant funding from central government into schools. Next slide. Yeah, and that's the point I made, the third bullet point. So high needs block. So we still have to keep an eye on those high needs block, because high need block, because of the demand, there can be substantial growth. And if there's further growth in high needs block, then that's what makes some of the council are finding it difficult. There are schools which have got a deficit plan, but when the school get into a deficit position, work with the council in order to turn on the budget and have a deficit recovery plan to make sure they've got a balanced budget, because school has got a responsibility to make sure their budget is sustainable as well. Next slide, please. And that's the final one. So the timetable, it has gone through various sort of scrutiny process in terms of internal, but it's come to FRG now. It's going to executive on the 9th of February, and this will be submitted to full council on 21st of February for approval. We had a meeting with trade union, so any feedback will be included, and we had staff and stakeholders consultation. So the stakeholders consultation, if there is any feedback, we'll put a paragraph in the executive report, which is coming on the 9th of February. So I'm expecting something from Adam, and once we've got those, that will be part of the executive report, and then it goes to full council. I think that's the final slides, so I'm quite happy to take any questions. But as I said last time, I didn't want to go through the budget because I wanted to bring his slides to go through it. Okay, quite happy to take any questions, Chair.
No, right. We move on to your other one, which is the Treasury Management Plan, isn't it?
That's included. The slides was.
Oh, that followed that,
Yeah.
did it? Sorry.
Yeah. No problem.
So we're on to the SIPFA.
Yeah, the SIPFA FM code, Chair. Yeah, it's just an update because we wrote a report in November. It was quite detailed report. I think on this one, I will just take you to the slides, which is second, third, fourth, fifth slides. Yeah. So we have carried out an initial assessment on the SIPFA code, and there's 4 or 5 areas where, yeah. So thanks very much. So next slide. So these we've already covered. Next slide, please. Yeah, so those are things we covered in November. So next one, please. Yeah, next one, please. Yeah, next one. That's the one. Okay, so we have to implement these guidance by March, April. There has been a lot of council has struggled because of COVID. So we've done an initial assessment based on officers. So further work is being done. So at this stage, I just wanted to brief you what the process. So one of the things, it's the standard says the chief finance officer must lead on promotion of delivery of whole organization of good financial management, public money and everything. So we had quite a detailed discussion at FRG and Audit Committee last week. So we have to feed whatever recommendation coming from SIPFA and the auditors and feed into this SIPFA. That's why we are taking a bit longer so that we have a much more sort of recommendation and the implementation of the SIPFA code. So we've done some training to members that was done in November on governance, on risk. So we have already some training already last year, but we'll be having a sort of more detail for this year, a detailed program for members, including FRG and industry. We do give detailed bespoke training when we have projects like DART or CPA, and we give bespoke training for CPA, but we will give much more training to all members. The second point, it says promote high standards of ethical behavior and conduct of financial management. That as well, we had a long debate at Audit Committee, and we are going to review how to promote ethical financial for the organization. So that as well, I'm saying is March, April, that work is going to take place February, March, because the budget is more or less, we are going to say the bulk of the work is done. And we'll be concentrating in February and March, get those, some of the gaps and try to address those. All financial monitoring reporting includes service performance information. What we tried, Robin has asked officers, we bring the financial report and the performance report at the same time. So at least members and executive can have a full view of both reports. As far as possible, we'll try to synchronize the dates. We'll also look at any additional performance information which we'll have. We do have when we see the performance quarterly management account which we produce Q3. We do also include about performance in terms of some of the increase in homelessness or increase in tenants in temporary accommodation or increase in number of children in care, or those are the things which drive the cost. So those are the things or key what we call cost drivers. So it's good to understand what is happening to cost drivers and demonstrate understanding of risk. That is absolutely key. And we had a long debate at Audit and FRG last week. Risk is absolutely critical. And you have to look at it, especially with our partners, some of the partners when they're talking about care sector. So we'll have to see how the care sector is resilient when we're talking about Active Luton, the Culture Trust. So these are partners which help us, and the third sector. So, and that is much more important because when we're going through COVID, a lot of adjustment which is taking place in the economy. So we'll have to work with our partners to say how we react to those adjustments, because the economy won't be the same. The retail sector won't be the same. So we'll have to make sure working with the care sector, our other stakeholders, and try to see what are the emerging risks post-COVID, and then try to make sure we address those. So those are some of the initial findings I just wanted to bring to members' attention. And I'm planning either in March or beginning of April to bring a much more comprehensive report on our improvement plan and the final findings. But at this stage, I have to say, based on those, quite a significant amount is green. Some amber. We'll have to work on some of those and to bring something so that potentially we'll have an implementation by April or beginning of May. So that's all I was going to say on those. But FRG, I'll be bringing a much more detailed report and it'll go to executive. Okay, Chair.
Does anybody actually have any questions on? Right. Thank you, Dev. We've got the work programme.
Thank you, Chair. Members have before them the current work programme for the remainder of this financial year and also the forward plan. So if there's any items on there that members wish to be put on the future work programme, now's your opportunity. Is everyone happy with the work programme in its current format?
Yes.
The only thing I would ask is the Simlet money report. I know it's difficult because of the ongoing police investigation, but we need to keep that on the agenda.
Sorry, for Dev interjects, it is down as a future item, but obviously, as you said, it's on ongoing investigation. So if Dev wants to,
I can give. So last time when I came here, I said we are meeting with Natis. So Natis is doing the investigation. So we had that meeting today. So it's coming to a situation where we'll be able to brief members. But just to say, it will be in private because the investigation is ongoing. Yeah. So yeah, and I think I would say within the, don't hold me for that, but we're working toward that plan. So I say by end of March, we should have everything ready to, a very comprehensive report we should come to.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate it would need to be in private because of the investigation. I just want to keep it in on the work programme. We're aware of it.
sorry, Chair, if that is the case where it's coming to conclusion around the end of March, do you want to provisionally put it onto the April meeting? Thank you, Chair.
Chair? Mike, is that okay? Thank you. I try not to say too much to these meetings, but I thought we used to be in the habit in Finance Review Group of looking at in a bit more detail at some of the budget areas. So in years gone by, when there was quite a significant savings programme that used to be reported to FRG, and I just wonder whether there's still a few areas where it's a bit sticky, as in like they're the areas where I've been meeting with the teams, so with Dev's finance business partners and the teams within the services, so children's services, some stuff in housing, some stuff in adult social care. I just wonder whether getting those is obviously up to you entirely, but I would really appreciate a wide range of interest, I think, in those areas. It feels like it has made a real difference, me meeting with the children's services team in particular and Atif. So it wouldn't be on Dev to come necessarily, like Atif could come and present the children's services stuff and you could do that. And the children's service, like it wouldn't be bothering the children's services team who are a huge amount of other stuff that they're getting on with. But I wonder whether your finance business partners might be able to come and present on those, like probably those three key areas. There might be some others that Dev might be able to advise on, but I think it's been a challenge. And that's stuff that it feels like where myself and Javira for a time were holding meetings and really trying to track progress and make sure that it was really being paid attention to in financial terms as well as service provision terms. It really did start to gain a bit of traction and make a bit of a difference. And I think, you know, that coming to FRG as well feels to me like it would be worth considering, but obviously it's for you to consider.
We used to have it as a regular thing, and it does seem to have dropped off. I know we've got other things that have come in, but I do think we might want to look at getting them back on the agenda.
Yeah, two things. First of all, we obviously need to concentrate on the financial aspects and not get tangled up with children's services scrutiny business, although the financial effects will have any impact on the service, clearly, so it can get a bit complicated. But I think if Andy's asking us to look at this, then we would need to have a damn good reason not to, wouldn't we? I'm quite happy, you know, if we slide these back into the work programme on a sort of semi-regular basis and see where we go.
Thank you.
The other thing which we've mentioned, we are not out of COVID, so there will still be pressures, there will still be risks. And that's one of the things which, just following from Andy's said, is we can bring the savings, but you can bring what are the emerging risks and how you're managing those risks. Because if you've got the alarm warning signs, we have to take sort of proactive measures, and we can ask FRG to look at it. Okay, what proactive measures are you taking, and how are you looking at in the next 12 months what those risks, whether it's going to materialize, and that will be a tremendous help and challenge to us as well. And what Andy's challenge has been very good, but from a scrutiny point of view, that we would really welcome. It will keep us on our toes.
So unless anybody's got any strong objections to that, I think we'll take
No,
that.
it's a good suggestion. Yeah, I agree with that.
Make sure that's back on the work programme, Chair.
I think we now have to move into the Local Government Act 1972 to consider the last item.
Thank you, Chair. Is that seconded to move into private?